Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm just putting the finishing touches on the Maine travel journal. I just got back from a glorious month in Maine, and I'd love to show you this journal. So, welcome to my journal flip through. So for this trip, I decided to take along my multi-drawing book made by Holbein, and you can see it says watercolor and multimedia. The paper's pretty good for mixed media. It has this cute little tie on the side, a spiral binding, and it lays flat. As I was finishing up my book, one of the things I like to do with travel journals is to personalize the cover. So I drew the outline of the state of Maine, and then I painted around that outline with gesso. And so it left the color of the cover. And then after the gesso dried, I added watercolor. And watercolor on top of gesso is really fun. You can see you still get that nice texture. You can paint your watercolor on and wipe it off. And you can move the colors pretty easily. After the whole thing dried, then I added my text. And yes, it's a bit of a rough surface to write on, but I think it worked and I'm really satisfied with the cover. So here we go. Here was the Maine trip. This is birch bark I found in Kennebunkport at the place where we were staying. And all over the coast were these beautiful rugosa roses with rose hips, rugosa rose hips, just bursting with their fullness. And the new symbol for what they're hoping will be the new Maine flag, and my dates. And you'll see that with this travel journal, you'll notice a lot of pages with this red broken outline. This is something I do after I get home when I'm looking at my pages feeling they need a little something extra. Also, this is some fun lobster washi tape I found in Portland. And I like to draw in my dates in a variety of ways. We found a poet that was so much fun. So I took a photo of him with his permission and just did this quick contour. Rather than stressing out about drawing the whole body, I just did the hands, the typewriter, and the face. And then the other thing was I was looking at my pages and feeling like they needed a little zhuzhing up, a little something extra. So I carved out a rugosa rose in a stamp, a hand-carved stamp, found some red ink, and added that in places, again, just to zhuzh up the pages a little bit, make them more interesting. And also I found some tissue paper with lobsters on it, so you'll see those show up in a couple of places. So again, I added this border just to tie in the whole journal after I got home. I attached some, bits and pieces from business cards. I did some painting directly on the pages and played with some fonts, some textures. And my all-time favorite thing, as most of you know, is playing with imaginary maps or maps that are part of my narrative, part of a way for me to remember where we went, like up to that Goose Rock beach outside of Kennebunkport. And of course, I had room for journal entries. The lobster is ubiquitous, and I found this page in a magazine, and I just simplified the drawing and cut it out of the magazine page for a bit of a collage just to get a lobster down there, and then some more of the rubber stamps. I was fascinated with not only the literal recording of this beautiful place, but I also wanted to record the sights and the smells and the sounds. So I went into the abstract a little, which I shared with my students who came out a couple weeks later. Business cards, always work in a travel journal. And then I just went on a deep dive painting boats. And I worked from photos. And these two were done on watercolor paper separate from the book because I wanted to see if I liked the watercolor background better. And, finding big shells and painting those and just sort of playing with some more abstract. And also I did a deep dive on painting the ocean and painting waves so that I could be prepared when my students came out. And of course, sitting on a beach, you get some wonderful figures and that dog and bird, and that's fun. You can either work on site quickly with watercolor or work from photos. And more of my efforts painting the waves. For this, I used crayon resist to see how I was going to like that. And the colors were, in fact, starting to turn. So I picked up that leaf. One thing that's pretty funny about this book, I see a lot of little splotches. That's because things don't dry quite as quickly as they do in Denver. And, I would close the book thinking everything was dry, and no, a little splotch. And some great shells. And the Ogunquit Museum of American Art is absolutely a gem. And so I was practicing a technique to show my students on that page. More ocean, and this time I did it with some masking fluid and then working on creatures on the beach. And yes, I worked from that. I drew that crab and the ibis from photos. And just loving the colors. And more waves, and this time I've used some gel pen and another map with a heading up here. And I love on these maps putting a border, and after I did this page I realized I needed a border on here, so I added that border to keep that consistent with my imaginary maps. This came from a brochure, so I sliced that bottom off and attached it, and you'll see another way to say the date. And then this was fun. The sea was wild this day, and I used a fan brush to get some of these textures. The whole thing is about textures and darks and lights, and oh my gosh, the crashing waves are wonderful. Then we found our way on a rainy day to the Nubble Lighthouse, and I literally did this sitting in the car, and I just wanted something really quick with pen. The colors were fabulous, the sounds were amazing, but I just needed to simplify it. And then we found some place to have steamers, which, if you've never tried them, yes, yes, yes. Again, just some quick wave ocean here and the ubiquitous lobster buoys. Ogunquit has a great playhouse. We got to see that musical, which was fun. And I had a long talk with this photographer whose work I bought. And I attached the business card so that I could still read the entry back there. And okay, yes, I use photos. So I printed this off when I got home, cut it out, put it on here, because I just didn't want to get caught in the deep end here going into the intricacies of the lobster. And it was such a beautiful plate. That orange plastic, the lobster and the corn, it was just, perfect. And by the way, quite yummy and quite expensive. Another map with my schmutz out here, the little bit, because I thought that was dry and it wasn't. More fabulous leaves that were near the cottage we rented, and more waves. And by this point now, I'm sort of fooling around with gouache. And the pumpkins had just come out, and of course, who doesn't look for heart rocks? I did this separately on watercolor paper as a new technique for drawing figures. It was a lot of fun. These were some of the students that came from my workshop, which started on Tuesday. We had fun playing with some abstract concepts in the workshop on the grounds of the Ogunquit Museum of American Art. And this was totally crazy. We talked about AI generating haikus, and so we used AI. We played around with that, just sitting over lunch or drinks one night. That was a lot of fun. Okay, more boats. I can't stop sketching those. A journal entry, and then our last day, Thursday, together. It was really great. So this was a super fun, quick sketch, especially with the ocean waves going a different direction, that diagonal. It was just beautiful. And again, you see how I tied the pages in, I think, with the broken red outline. And then when I got home, I still had some blank pages, and I love to go back and just add thoughts and memories, and these were just some funny things that people said during the workshop. Here are some of the things I bought. Notice the candy, of course. And here's our group, and this was a little trick. I had photographed this, well, the waitress did. I printed it off on my home printer, and I used Sharpie to fill in the background so that the faces would really stand out. So that's a little trick with photos. Just blackening that whole thing up. And it's really easy to do on just copy paper. And then here's that other technique of putting the group together while it's really wet, just looking for shapes rather than any detail and letting the colors bleed one into the next. That was really satisfying. Again, some photos I printed out, a little abstract. We all sent postcards to ourselves with our abstract painting on them. And then this is the map of this fabulous lodge that we stayed in, the Beachmere Inn. Shout out to them. And the rooms that I had and the rooms that I would love to stay in. And then a painting that I completed just before starting this video from a photograph. I had actually started this on a back page, but I really wanted to dive into the rocks, so to speak, and play with the rocky coastline. So I worked from a photo for that to get that finished. And then I always keep in the back of my book lists, and here you see the stamp again. We had a great time creating a bingo card, and here's all the things we used for bingo. And then my lists, my joy to keep at the end of any travel journal. People that I met, I call heart connections, what to pack next year, things I found, and my best meals. And then before I even went on the trip, I had made this guide of swatches for mixing greens because I knew we'd see a lot of them. That came in handy. And then my final page is the actual itinerary, which was fun to keep. So here's my travel journal for Maine 2024. Part of it included my Sketching Maine workshop. I'm already planning for Sketching Maine 2025. And if you have any questions or would like more information about travel journaling, please get a hold of me. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe down below.